Hey guys, Palsteron here, and today let's talk about the last of the manifesto for 3.20 about curses. Now, this is a pretty contentious one. A lot of people say they like this manifesto, a lot of people say they don't. Let's quickly go over what's actually in this manifesto, kind of like a TLDR, and then let's talk about it. The first thing they talk about here is that they want to make self-cast curses stronger, and I think they basically succeeded. So this is something that I predicted here. They actually removed it. If you didn't know, normal map bosses had a 33% less multiplier for curses, and bigger bosses had 66%. And this made them pretty mediocre against some of the bigger bosses that you face at the start of the league. There's some upsides to this and some downsides to this, but overall, it's a good change. Now, if you're asking how big is this, well, 66% basically means that you're only acting at 33% of the curse's effectiveness. So if you get that from 33% back to 100%, that would be like giving you 200% more curse effect. Just so you can visualize how crazy this last multiplier actually was. There is a few problems with this, namely that the way they kind of balanced the game was more around rares. A lot of the times, rares were a lot harder than the boss and the map itself. However, there's some stuff where I really like this. For example, at Leaguestart, everybody kind of like unlocks their stuff. You do bosses, and those are usually harder than just killing the rares in your map. So for that purpose, I like it a lot. I think this is going to help smooth things out at Leaguestart quite a bit. And as for rares, we know they get changed. We don't know exactly how much or how good the changes are. Maybe they're not that much of a threat anymore. So then this is an even better change. Then let's talk about Doom. Doom is gonzo. Now, Doom, while definitely an interesting mechanic, kind of just felt like it was convoluted for no reason. I'm happy that it's gone. I don't really think there's any reason to have it in the game. And they did compensate for this for skills that thrive on Doom. For example, hexblast. We're going to go over that in a second. Overall, I'm not really taken aback by this. This is a pretty good change. Now, I'll leave my predictions out on stuff like Hexblast, Impending Doom, Bane. We'll just have to see how they actually change before we can say much. They're saying a lot of words here, but we don't know until the gem info is out. They're also infamous for changing stuff like that on the fly. So I don't really know what's going to happen. Overall, they want to make Hexblast less annoying because now you don't have to wait until Doom builds up anymore. So that means this 1 second delay for Doomsday is not there anymore, which is very welcome. Overall, I hope there's going to be some fancy curse build. Maybe Bane is going to be a lot better now. We'll see. Now, then we have reworks of uniques. And there's the unique ring anathema, which now reads, your curse limit is equal to your maximum power charges. Which on a power charge stacker basically means you can apply all curses if you want to, right? You're going to have 9, 10, up to 12 power charges. So your curse limit basically doesn't exist. I don't know exactly how crazy this is. It looks crazy on first sight. Will it actually be something that people want to do in endgame compared to other options? It's like a ring. It doesn't seem too intrusive in the build. My first instinct would be this is going to be busted in something, and it's going to be really rare unique. And they also nerfed curse on hit rings. The reason for that is they described that they want to make self-casting powerful and everything that's kind of automated less powerful. And honestly, if they make it so rares aren't the biggest factors in the game anymore and bosses actually matter again, especially map bosses or stuff like that, I think this is a good change because against map bosses, usually you'll deal more damage, and against rares, you won't need it as much anymore. That being said, overall, you will still probably want a curse on hit setup. What will most likely happen is that you have your curse on hit setup that you had before, but then you will also probably relegate like a gem slot to having a actual curse against bosses. Now, this is actually more of a nerf than you think it is because curses that are applied automatically are level 1 curses, and they made it so some of the curses like vulnerability and despair actually get normalized. And I've heard a lot of misinformation about this, but basically what normalize means is that if you look at level 20 here, a level 20 despair gem, which is what you would have if you applied yourself, is not actually that much stronger than a level 1. If you have a level 1, and then you also get increased effect because you have the mod on your ring, for example, like 32% increased effect, you'll almost where a level 20 gem would be that you apply yourself. And what they want to try to do now is instead of -20 to -29, it's still going to go to -29, but it's going to start somewhere a little lower, basically nerfing, once again, curse on hit. I don't know how exactly they're going to nerf it, but this is what it looks like. Overall, yeah, it's going to be a big hit for endgame builds. But the implications for Leaguestart, once again, for people who are actually casting their curses themselves, is huge. And for most people, that is the biggest barrier. And we have the changes to temporal change and enfeeble, which are interesting and I think a good overall change. I have some problems with it though. So what they're trying to do here is they want to fix temporal change and enfeeble. If you don't know, over the years, these two curses have been problem, right? And Feeble gives reduced damage taken. So if you scale too much curse effect, there were instances where people could actually be invulnerable. And also instances where temporal chains makes enemies around you so slow that they can't even act upon anything. And there's also the whole self-cast shenanigans. So they're just really hard to balance. So what they want to do is across the board, curse effect is going to be removed, or just you're only going to get very little overall, but the base gems are going to be stronger, which overall gives more character power without investment. However, this is mostly for self-cast curses. Blasphemy overall has been nerfed for a bit. Let me actually check that out real quick. So Blasphemy right here, they basically want to make it so Blasphemy takes a hit. And we've added penalties to both Blasphemy and Hextouch support, which grants less curse effect at all gem levels. And the problem with this is it's nice that they want to buff Temporal Chains and Enfeeble, but those are the #1 curses that you want on Blasphemy and not Selfcast. If you think about how you die usually in PoE, there is no way you're just going to react at a Roa that charges at you, or you're just going to randomly get off-screened, right, by something that you're going to curse before, right? It doesn't happen. I guess if you fight against the boss, you can put on Enfeeble in case he hits you and you can't dodge or something, but usually what gets you are unexpected things, right? It's stuff that you don't see, and that is where you really want these curses on something like an Enfeeble or Curse on Hit. So these are just not really good curses to self-cast, right? You want to automate them because you want them to always be up and you don't want to get randomly one-shot. It's not like, oh, I see this goat off screen, it might kill me, let's real quickly put a Temporal Chains on it. We all know how hectic this game is. It doesn't happen. So overall, I think this will actually be a nerf to Temporal Chains and Enfeeble. Hot take. And then at the end, let's talk about the Occultist nerf. So Occultist got hit quite hard. The one thing that I'm surprised by is that Profane Bloom is still there. Over time, they really tried it to make it harder and harder to get Explodey. For example, Impulsa is very expensive because you have to actually sacrifice your body armor, right? Like, body armor is a very sought after gear piece where you can get a lot of defensive and offensive stats. So sacrificing most of that for Explodey, pretty rough. Azanovs cost you a glove slot, right? The explosions are only 3%, stuff like that. So overall, they made it a lot harder, right? But Profane Bloom's still there, which I'm happy about. I think Occultist overall has a really strong contender still, but they did remove some things. The #1 thing they nerfed was Malediction. They removed Malediction from it, and they're going to rename it. So what this now does is basically just +1 curse, and the hexproof effect is going to be moved from Profane Bloom to Malediction. Overall, pretty big nerf. I'm just happy Profane Bloom is still here. Now, if there was any ascendancy that kind of needed to be a little bit adjusted, it was Occultist and maybe, I guess, Inquisitor. So overall, I'm not too surprised by this. Also, depending on how good extra curses is, maybe this node is actually a lot stronger than it was before, even without the increased effect, right? The main problem is that you'll probably, in endgame, just get this ring, and then the +2 extra curses doesn't even matter. Now, in conclusion, let's quickly talk about this. So I think that it's good that they incentivize you to press buttons. Automated curses kind of make casting curses yourself completely redundant, and Doom didn't really help enough. However, most people don't really like to press buttons in endgame, which is overall why I think this will be a nerf for endgame builds. That being said, 200% more effect for your curses against bosses at Leaguestart is insane. Now, obviously, some other curses are getting adjusted, so we don't know the exact numbers. So for some curses, it's going to be like 150% more. For some, it's maybe going to be more than 200%. But you can't help but wonder just how much this is going to help for Leaguestarter builds. The #1 struggle that I hear from people is Leaguestart having kind of like a footing in the league, getting into the league on your first build, and you don't want to play those meta builds, right? This is going to help with that. At the start, you don't have the quality of life options. You are going to press buttons because they give you extra power, and this is exactly on point. You don't need the damage against white packs or blue packs. You need them where it matters, and at Leaguestart, that is bosses. Now, there's an asterisk here, which is if they actually rebalance Arch Nemesis significantly, which would be nice. Let's just assume that. Otherwise, it's overall a little bit of a nerf against Arch Nemesis rares. That being said, at Leaguestart, you need to unlock everything. So you're going to have to fight all these bosses. So instead of having to get a carry on something like a CF champion, for example, you might not have to do that anymore. And this does make a huge difference. Just think about RF builds that now have way higher effectiveness on their flammability and their elemental weakness. And this is a build that has time to cast those, right? The RF is doing damage while you press those buttons. The same with ballista builds. Once you have your ballistas down, you have time to cast things. Minion builds. So for those, it's going to be huge. However, once we get into endgame, things change. Curse on Hit will be weaker. Does it really matter in endgame? Probably not, but that once again depends on how they nerf Arch Nemesis in whatever way. So that's what it depends a lot on. Temporal Chains and Enfeeble, I just don't really think it's like the way to go. I don't think curses as defenses that you have to cast yourself. You can't respond that fast, right? It's like saying life flasks are a meaningful defensive layer. Like everything that you have to do reactively is always worse than something that's just always up. So I'm not really sure I like these changes overall. And I think some people might be overhyping these, especially with some of the curse effect now gone. I'm a little bit surprised that Alchemist's Mark didn't get changed. This was an absolute abomination for a lot of builds. It doesn't make any sense for Poison. It doesn't make any sense for Ignite because Flame Surge exists. I guess this will see 0 play again. I guess this would have been like the Manifesto where you put that in, so I guess it just will never get changed. And there's also still no mark on hit for spells, which I don't really understand. They wanted to make self-cast stronger, and versus something like cast on crit, right? But then in the end, what they did is cast on crit has an attack, so it can automatically apply these marks, while self-cast has to press the button. So that's indirectly another nerf to self-cast builds. Kind of weird. I don't know why this is attack only. I'm also positively surprised here. This was something I was going into. I would say they will remove Profane Bloom, which I'm very happy that I was wrong. Overall, Occultist did get worse though. So my thoughts are, I like this. I don't think all of these changes hit the mark, but overall, I think it gives you character power at times where you need it the most, which I think is League Start, where you're actually going to press buttons. I think we're really underestimating just how strong removing this less multiplier is. Something like RF profits from this immensely. But yeah, 4th and final Manifesto. Hope you liked the video. See you around. And that's it for the video. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up. And if you haven't already, subscribe. As always, a huge shout out to my Twitch subscribers and my Patreons. I couldn't do videos like this without you. Thank you so much for the support. But yeah, overall, I think this hits exactly where it should be hitting, which is at League Start, where you're still pressing buttons and you haven't automated everything. I think that RF getting a little bit of single target love, awesome. Overall, I like this Manifesto. It's not perfect, but yeah. With that being said, since I still don't have a slogan, see you next time.